Imagine this. A young woman, barely in her mid-20s, stands inside a rickety elevator clutching her baby tightly to her chest. The dim fluorescent light flickers above, casting shadows that seem almost alive as they dance across the cold metal walls. She's exhausted. Her worn-out sneakers and frayed jacket tell stories of sleepless nights and endless struggles. Just moments ago, she was rushing through the lobby of a towering corporate building, hoping to catch a glimpse of someone who could change everything for her and her child. But now, here she is, trapped, and it gets worse. Because when the doors slid shut behind her, they didn't just seal her off from the outside world, they sealed her in with him. A man whose name is whispered in boardrooms and splashed across headlines. The CEO of one of the most powerful companies in the city. As the elevator jerks to a halt between floors, panic begins to creep in. For her, every second counts. Her baby squirms in her arms, sensing her unease, and lets out a soft whimper. She rocks him gently, trying to soothe both him and herself. But her mind races with questions. Why did she even come here today? Was it desperation or foolish hope that brought her to this place? And what will happen if the doors finally open? Across from her, the CEO shifts uncomfortably, his tailored suit looking absurdly out of place in this cramped space. He's scrolling through his phone, seemingly unfazed by their predicament, though there's an edge of irritation in his expression. To him, this must feel like nothing more than an inconvenience, a minor blip in his otherwise perfect day. But something about the way he glances at her makes her stomach churn. Does he recognize her, or is it just curiosity, the kind reserved for people you'd never expect to cross paths with? The air grows heavier as the silence stretches on. It's not just the physical weight of being stuck, it's the unspoken tension between them. They couldn't be more different. On one side there's her, a single mother scraping by, doing whatever it takes to provide for her child. On the other, there's him, a man who probably hasn't had to worry about money in decades. Yet here they are, forced into proximity by circumstances neither of them chose. The irony isn't lost on her. All those years of hearing about how successful he is, how untouchable he seems, and now she's sharing an elevator with him while holding her crying baby. If only life was simpler. If only she hadn't been evicted last week, forcing her to move into a tiny apartment miles away from her job. If only the daycare hadn't closed unexpectedly, leaving her no choice but to bring her son along. If only, well, if only a lot of things. But then again, maybe fate has a strange sense of humor. After all, wasn't she planning to approach him today anyway, to ask for help? No, not exactly ask. Beg might be a better word. She knows it sounds desperate, maybe even naive, but what else can she do? Her options are running out faster than she can keep up with. This man, this billionaire CEO, has resources beyond anything she could ever imagine. Resources that could make her problems disappear in an instant. Of course, she also knows the odds of him actually listening to her are slim to none. People like him don't usually pay attention to people like her. Still, she came here today because sometimes hope is all you have left. Now though, standing face to face with him in this broken-down elevator, she's starting to wonder if she made a mistake. The baby starts fussing again, breaking the fragile quiet. She whispers soothing words, bouncing him lightly in her arms, but it's clear he's hungry and tired. Out of the corner of her eye, she sees the CEO glance at them, his brow furrowing slightly. Is it concern? Annoyance? She can't tell. Whatever it is, it makes her cheeks burn with embarrassment. She hates feeling vulnerable, especially in front of someone like him, someone who likely doesn't understand what it's like to struggle. To wake up every morning wondering how you'll survive another day. But then again, maybe she's wrong. Maybe beneath that polished exterior lies a story she knows nothing about. Maybe everyone carries burdens, even men like him. The thought crosses her mind briefly before she pushes it aside. Right now her focus is on getting out of this elevator and figuring out what comes next. Time drags on, each minute stretching longer than the last. The CEO finally puts his phone down, exhaling sharply as if realizing for the first time that they're truly stuck. How long do you think we'll be here? He asks, his voice calm but tinged with impatience. She hesitates before answering, unsure whether responding will make things better or worse. I don't know, she says softly, avoiding his gaze. His eyes linger on her for a moment longer than necessary before he turns away, muttering something under his breath. Whether it's frustration or resignation, she can't say. Either way, the energy in the small space shifts subtly, charged with an unspoken awareness of their differences and perhaps their similarities too. Just as the silence threatens to swallow them whole, the elevator shudders violently, jolting them both. Her heart leaps into her throat as she instinctively pulls her baby closer, bracing for the worst. Across from her, the CEO grips the handrail, his composure slipping for the first time. For a fleeting moment they lock eyes and she sees something unexpected. Fear. Not the detached annoyance from earlier, but genuine alarm. It's fleeting, gone almost as quickly as it appeared, but it leaves her unsettled. When the shaking stops, the relief is palpable but short-lived, because now, faint voices echo from somewhere above them. Help is coming. The realization should comfort her, but instead it fills her with dread. What happens when the doors open? Will he walk away without a second glance, leaving her to fend for herself once again? Or will something unexpected occur? Something that changes everything. She doesn't have time to dwell on it. As the sound of footsteps grows louder, the elevator groans ominously, and the lights flicker again. The CEO straightens up, his mask of confidence returning, while she clutches her baby even tighter. The anticipation is unbearable, every nerve in her body screaming for resolution. Then, finally, the mechanism whirs to life, and the doors begin to slide open. But before they fully part, revealing whoever awaits them, the scene freezes. The tension hangs thick in the air, unresolved. What awaits them on the other side? Will this chance encounter lead to salvation or disaster? You'll have to wait until the next episode to find out. As the elevator doors creak open, a rush of cool air greets them, carrying with it the faint hum of voices and hurried footsteps. A maintenance worker peers inside, his face lighting up with relief when he sees they're unharmed. "Are you two okay?" he asks, his tone urgent but kind. The CEO steps out first, brushing imaginary dust off his sleeves as if to reclaim some semblance of control. He nods curtly at the worker before glancing back toward her. For a moment their eyes meet again, and she feels that same flicker of curiosity, or was it judgment from earlier? But then he turns away without another word, already pulling out his phone, likely ready to forget this entire ordeal ever happened. She hesitates for a second, her grip tightening on her baby as reality crashes over her like a wave. She's free now, but what has really changed? The weight of her situation presses down on her chest, heavier than before. Her heart pounds as she steps out of the elevator, clutching her son close. Around her, the sleek marble floors and towering glass walls of the corporate lobby feel alien, almost suffocating. She doesn't belong here, and everyone seems to know it. Employees pass by, their polished shoes clicking against the floor, glancing at her with subtle disdain or outright confusion. What is she doing in a place like this? But there's no time to dwell on that. Not yet, as she stands awkwardly near the elevators, trying not to draw attention. Fragments of memory come rushing back, the reason she came here today. It wasn't just desperation, it was hope. Hope fueled by stories she'd heard about the CEO, whispers of how he once started small, built himself up from nothing. People said he had a soft spot for underdogs, though she doubted anyone around him would believe it now. Still, she clung to those rumors because they gave her something to hold on to, something to fight for. Her mind drifts to the events leading up to this moment. Just last week, she received an eviction notice, a piece of paper that felt heavier than all her problems combined. She'd been working double shifts at a diner downtown, barely scraping together enough to cover rent and diapers. But it wasn't enough, nothing ever was. And then, yesterday, her landlord showed up at her door, his expression grim. "You have 3 days," he'd said, leaving her stomach in knots. 3 days to find somewhere else to live, to figure out how to keep a roof over her baby's head. 3 days to fix everything. That's when she decided to take a chance. She remembered reading about the CEO's annual charity gala, held right here in this building. Maybe, just maybe, she could slip past security, catch his eye, and tell him her story. It sounded crazy even to her own ears, but what choice did she have? So she packed a bag, bundled up her baby, and headed to the address listed online. She didn't care about looking out of place or being turned away. All she cared about was finding someone who could help her. Someone powerful enough to make a difference now. Standing in the aftermath of the elevator incident, she wonders if coming here was a mistake after all. Across the lobby, the CEO is already deep in conversation with a group of executives, his demeanor calm and commanding. They laugh at something he says, their body language relaxed and deferential. To them, he's untouchable, a force of nature, wrapped in a perfectly tailored suit. To her, he's still just a man who might have the power to change her life or destroy it further. Her thoughts are interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. One of the executives detaches himself from the group and strides toward her, his expression unreadable. "Miss Carter sent me," he says briskly, gesturing for her to follow him. "Miss Carter," she frowns, unsure who that is, but follows anyway, too overwhelmed to argue. The executive leads her through a maze of hallways, each one more intimidating than the last. Glass offices line the corridors, filled with people typing furiously on laptops or talking animatedly on phones. She feels like an intruder, every pair of eyes silently questioning why she's there. Finally, they arrive at a conference room. Inside, a woman with sharp features and an impeccably styled bob sits waiting. "This must be Ms. Carter, please." "Sit," she says, motioning to a chair across from her. Her tone is polite but firm, leaving little room for refusal. As she settles into the seat, her baby cooing softly in her arms, Miss Carter begins firing off questions. Who is she? Why is she here? What does she want? Each question feels like a punch to the gut, forcing her to confront the raw truth of her circumstances. She stumbles over her words at first, her voice trembling as she explains her predicament. But as she talks, something shifts. Her fear gives way to determination, her desperation fueling her resolve. By the time she finishes, tears glisten in her eyes, but her jaw is set. She's laid everything bare, and now it's up to them to decide what happens next. Meanwhile, outside the conference room, the CEO paces nervously. Despite his outward confidence, the encounter in the elevator has unsettled him more than he cares to admit. There was something about the young woman, her resilience, perhaps, or the fierce protectiveness she showed toward her child, that struck a chord deep within him. Memories of his own struggles rise unbidden to the surface late. Nights spent hunched over textbooks, surviving on ramen noodles, fighting tooth and nail to build a future for himself. He'd promised never to forget where he came from, yet somehow, over the years, he'd let the trappings of success distance him from the very people he'd once vowed to help. His musings are cut short by the arrival of Ms. Carter, who updates him on the situation. When she mentions the eviction notice and the young mother's plea for assistance, he freezes. Something about her story resonates with him, stirring emotions he thought he'd buried long ago. Yet doubt lingers. Can he trust her intentions? Or is this just another scheme, another attempt to exploit his wealth and influence? He wrestles with these questions as Ms. Carter lays out potential solutions, each one carefully calculated to minimize risk while maximizing impact. But none of them feel right. None of them address the core issue, whether he's willing to step outside his comfort zone and truly make a difference. Back in the conference room, tension simmers beneath the surface. Every word exchanged carries weight, every decision fraught with consequences. Outside, the sun dips below the horizon, casting long shadows across the city skyline. Time is running out, not just for her, but for him as well. Will he choose to act, to honor the promises he made to himself years ago, or will fear and hesitation hold him back? As the clock ticks closer to midnight, the stakes grow higher, drawing both characters inexorably toward a confrontation neither of them can avoid. And then, just as it seems like answers might finally emerge, a new complication arises. A call comes in urgent and unexpected, throwing everything into chaos. Voices rise in argument, tempers flare, and suddenly, the fragile thread holding their fates together threatens to snap. In the midst of it all, she clutches her baby tighter, her heart pounding with a mix of terror and hope. The climax looms, just beyond reach, shrouded in uncertainty. What will happen next? Will justice prevail or will despair win the day? The urgent call throws everyone off balance. It's from the legal team, and their message is sharp and direct. There's been a breach in protocol regarding visitors to the building. Security footage shows her slipping past checkpoints earlier that day, and now questions are swirling about how she managed to get so far. Ms. Carter's face hardens as she listens, her polished demeanor cracking slightly under the pressure. When she hangs up, she looks at the young woman with a mix of frustration and pity. "This complicates things," she says quietly, her voice clipped but not unkind. For a moment, silence fills the room. The weight of the situation crashes down on her like a tidal wave. She feels exposed, vulnerable, and utterly defeated. All her efforts rushing to this building, enduring the humiliation of judgmental stares, even surviving that suffocating elevator ride seem meaningless now. Her grip tightens around her baby, who stirs slightly in her arms, sensing her distress. What will happen to them? Will they be thrown out, left to face eviction alone? Or worse, will this incident haunt her, making it even harder to find help elsewhere? But then, something unexpected happens. The door bursts open, and the CEO strides in, his expression unreadable. For a man who seemed so detached just hours ago, he now radiates intensity. His eyes lock onto hers, searching for something behind sincerity, perhaps courage. He turns to Ms. Carter and waves her off, dismissing her before she can say another word. Then, without preamble, he pulls out a chair and sits across from her. The air crackles with tension as he leans forward, his elbows resting on the table. "Tell me everything," he says, his tone firm but not unkind. Her heart races as she recounts her story again, this time with raw honesty. She doesn't hold back, sharing every painful detail: the eviction notice, the sleepless nights, the fear of losing her son to a system she barely understands. Tears stream down her face, but she keeps going, driven by sheer desperation. When she finishes, the room falls silent once more. The CEO sits back, his jaw clenched as if wrestling with conflicting thoughts. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, he speaks. "You shouldn't have had to come here," he says, his voice low but filled with conviction. "No one should." His words catch her off guard. She expected rejection, maybe even anger, but not this. Not empathy. He goes on to explain that while he can't undo the mistakes of the past, he can try to make amends now. With a few quick calls, he arranges temporary housing for her and her baby through a foundation tied to his company. More importantly, he promises to look into her case personally, ensuring that her landlord faces consequences for neglecting proper procedures during the eviction process. It's not a permanent solution, but it's a lifeline, and right now, that's enough. The pieces fall into place. Relief washes over her, followed by gratitude so profound it nearly overwhelms her. She thanks him repeatedly, her voice trembling with emotion, but he brushes it off with a small smile. "Don't thank me yet," he says softly. "We still have work to do." And for the first time since entering this building, she believes that maybe, just maybe, things might turn out okay outside. The city lights shimmer against the night sky, casting a glow that feels almost hopeful. As she steps out of the corporate lobby with her baby cradled safely in her arms, she takes a deep breath, letting the cool air fill her lungs. This isn't the end of her journey, it's only the beginning. But for the first time in months, she allows herself to dream of a future where stability isn't just a distant hope but a tangible reality behind her. The CEO watches from a window, his reflection blending with the glittering skyline. He knows he's taken a risk, stepping outside the boundaries of his usual routine to help someone most would consider insignificant. Yet, as he stands there, he realizes it wasn't just about her. It was about remembering who he used to be, a scrappy kid determined to rise above his circumstances. Helping her reminded him of the values he'd almost forgotten, reigniting a spark of humanity buried beneath years of success. In the days that follow, news of the CEO's involvement spreads quietly among employees, sparking conversations about corporate responsibility and compassion. Some admire his actions, others remain skeptical, but one thing is certain: lives have been changed, not just hers, but his too. Subplots unfold as she begins rebuilding her life, finding strength she never knew she had. Meanwhile, the CEO starts implementing changes within his company, creating programs aimed at supporting struggling families. It's a slow process, fraught with challenges, but it's a start. The story concludes with a quiet moment shared between mother and child, sitting in their new apartment at modest space. Bathed in warm light, she rocks her baby to sleep, humming a soft lullaby. Outside, the world continues to spin, indifferent to individual struggles. But inside this tiny haven, peace reigns. As she gazes at her sleeping son, she whispers a promise: no matter what happens next, they'll face it together. Together, they'll find their way. And so, the tale comes full circle, leaving audiences with a powerful reminder of resilience, hope, and the transformative power of kindness. Sometimes, all it takes is one act of courage, one person willing to step up to change the course of someone else's life. In the end, we're all connected, bound by our shared humanity. And in those connections lies the potential for miracles.